Hi, today I'm going to talk about my first love. My first love hit me in 1991 when I was 15 years old. I was a shy teenager into volleyball, music, and hanging out with friends basically like most teenagers at the time. I wasn't spoiled with female attention. Tall with large ears, a silly hairstyle I tried to use to cover my defect. I was the subject of jokes and teasing from my classmates. Sometimes I wondered, how would I ever find a partner? Who would want someone like me? In the summer of 1991, after exams were over, before heading to the village for vacation, my father arranged for me to work at a factory. Just before the weekend, I overheard my parents talking about a friend of my mom's coming to visit. She had met her at a sanatorium. The friend was from Moldova, my mom's age, and was supposed to come with her daughter, who was my age. Well, it didn't matter to me. We lived in a family dormitory, just 2 rooms. On Saturday, I was at home, watching TV. I heard some noise and laughter in the hallway. Greetings. I realized the guests had arrived. The door to the room opened and my mom's friend came in and greeted me. Then her daughter walked in. And that's it. The world around me stopped existing. She said hello. I literally lost my ability to speak. I remember nodding. They stayed for a few hours and went to my mom's sister for the night, since there was no place for them in the dorm. As soon as they left, I didn't know what to do. My heart sank and I felt an emptiness that made me want to cry. This girl kept appearing in front of my eyes. I realized she was from another republic, 500 kilometers away, spoke a different language, and probably had so many friends and guys that someone like me, a shy, awkward teenager, had no chance. Through subtle hints, I learned that the guests would come again the next day. The entire evening I spent thinking about how I would talk to her, how I'd behave. Of course, when they came the next day, I could only sit at my desk in the other room and listen to music. During the entire visit, I managed to speak just a few words, blushing and sweating. We watched a movie together on cable TV. I sat just a couple of meters away from her, but she didn't look at me and I was too scared to look at her. That night, the guests left. And that was it. Those 2 days changed my life forever. I thought about her every day, almost constantly. I would recall those 2 brief encounters and imagine a million scenarios of talking to her, doing something. To give you an idea, for 3 years I thought about this girl every single day. I graduated from school, finished 9th grade, entered a vocational school, and knew I was headed for the army. There was no thought of trying to avoid it. I understood I would never see the girl I loved so deeply again. And I started wondering, what exactly did I love? Over the years, the image of the girl blurred. All that remained were vivid moments: her hairstyle, baggy jeans, barefoot in light sandals, slim, short, her eyes, lips. During my year of work at the factory before the army, I searched for her features in every young girl I met. I tried to convince myself that if I found someone who resembled her, I could love them. If that's even possible. Then, on January 20th, 1994, I remember sitting at home late at night, listening to music. I had borrowed a compilation from a friend and there was a song by Vadim Kazachenko called Pismo Letter. The thought struck me, write a letter. Write to the former Soviet Republic, now independent, and send a letter to the girl who probably no longer remembered me. The plan seemed grand. The first feeling was embarrassment. What would my parents and friends think? But in a few months I'd be going to the army, so what did it matter? I asked my mom for the address and, knowing her birthday was on February 3rd, I bought a congratulatory card, wrote a poem, sealed it in an envelope, and sent it off. Of course, at the time, there was no delivery confirmation and I doubted anyone in another country would provide one. In late March, I felt ready to write her a letter explaining my feelings of love. I rewrote it 3 or 4 times before finally sending it. I felt strangely light afterward. If I didn't get a reply, I would at least have tried. I knew the chances were slim that my letter would reach her, that she would remember me, and that she might respond. And what would happen next? I was going into the army in a month. What were the chances anything positive could come from this? Then on May 30th, I was drafted into the army. The quarantine, the oath, everything that came with it. Afterward, I was allowed a day off to visit home. At home, there was a lot of family and everyone was happy to see me. And then, like a bucket of cold water over my head, there was a letter from Moldova. My hands were literally shaking as I opened it. A letter from the girl I'd been thinking about every day for the last 3 years. The contents weren't overly joyful. Yes, she remembered me and was surprised by the birthday card, and she was very surprised that I had such feelings for her. She agreed to correspond, but on the condition that she might send a photo later, as she didn't have a suitable one at the moment. That was it. But to me, it felt like something monumental. I was on top of the world. I remember my mom asking, "Who is this letter from? Who's writing to you?" I said, "It's from the daughter of your friend. We're corresponding." She was quite surprised by this situation. In my next letter, I asked her to send her responses to my home address, as I didn't want my letters being opened and read in the army. In her 3rd letter, she sent me a photo. It was a 10 by 15 picture, almost full length, with the features slightly blurred from a poor quality print. In the photo, she smiled slightly at me, the girl who had taken over my peace of mind and my heart. Her hairstyle was different, her expression was different, but I didn't care. I stared at that photo, trying to memorize every detail. On New Year's Eve, I asked for leave and I really wanted her to come visit. Her mom was also surprised that we were corresponding, but she agreed to visit with her daughter for the new year. So, I was on leave and my family and I were heading to my aunt's house where we would meet the guests from Moldova. I walked into the room and she was standing by the window, smiling. I approached, extended my hand and said, "Hi, I'm Dmitri." She smiled back and shook my hand, replying, "Natalia." We talked all evening and later we traveled with our families to my home. We had just moved into a new 3-room apartment after the collapse of the Soviet Union to ring in the new year. I was the happiest person in the world. Inside, I felt immense joy simply having her near me, even just from her presence. The next day, I had to return to my unit and she and her mom headed home. I remember pushing the last intercity bus to Odessa, which had been stuck because of an unexpected snowstorm. Everything worked out, she made it to her evening train and I got back to my unit. Then, life returned to its usual routine, but the letters from my beloved girl brightened my days. In February 1996, I was granted 20 days of leave. I decided to go to Moldova for her birthday. My mom looked at me with such disbelief that I realized I'd probably be written out of the will. I used my leave money to buy a train ticket. Luckily, the Odessa Ivano-Frankivsk train passed through Moldova, stopping just a kilometer from the town where my girl lived. I could now refer to her as my girlfriend, although our letters had remained quite friendly. I bought a bouquet of roses. It was February, had it packed to transport, and my aunt, who sold clothes at the market in Odessa, sold me a beautiful black dress for a very reasonable price. I was all dressed up in a custom-made shirt with roses, a dress, and a Polaroid camera with 3 rolls of film. I was headed to a birthday party in another country, surrounded by strangers who mostly spoke an unfamiliar language and asked, "Who is this guy and what is he doing here?" Explaining it only caused more confusion. On February 5, 1996, at the train station where the train stopped for just 2 minutes, we kissed for the first time. That was the most I could have hoped for after all these years and everything I had gone through. To some, it might seem insignificant, but for me, at that moment, it was a monumental achievement. At home, my mom had a serious talk with me. She asked what was going on, why I was doing all this, and whether I wasn't interested in girls here, in my own country, in my own city. What love? Why was I confusing this girl? She had a boyfriend and they were planning to get married. Seriously, it felt like I had fallen from Everest to the depths of a village cellar. Married? When? No one had mentioned anything about that to me. I decided to take action. I went to visit some acquaintances who had a phone and we agreed to call each other long distance. We'd already started calling each other on weekends. I asked her about her boyfriend and she replied, "Well, in our correspondence, we're friends. You haven't written anything inappropriate." Yes, I was surprised by your visit, the gifts, and the attention. But what's next? And what was next? What could come of it? It wasn't like going to a neighboring town for a date, let alone to a different country.